Hello there! This is a video about IELTS Listening Section 4, also known as the hardest part of the listening test. In this video, we're going to look at the two final skills and the two final tasks that you might get in the test. Now, you're also going to get the chance to put all the skills and all the strategies we've developed over the course of our video series into practice in our greatest challenge yet. So if you're curious to see how hard it is or how well you can perform, then stay tuned till the end of the video. So if you're planning on taking the IELTS test or you just want to know more about it, then go on, subscribe to Home Studies. IELTS Listening Section 4. So what is this all about? Well, it is a talk, a presentation, or a lecture given by one person, and it's usually in front of an audience. So the speaker talks about a topic of academic interest. It's usually something historical or scientific, perhaps even medical. There are up to 3 tasks, and these can be completing notes or a table or a flowchart, something like that. And as always, there are 10 questions with a short pause between the tasks. Now, in some of the listening tasks, for any section, not just IELTS Listening Section 4, you might have to look at a map. For example, the map of a town centre, or the map of a geographical region, or perhaps the map showing directions from point A to B. And you'll need to understand the description of what's on this map and then either label it or follow directions. So let's look at a map that shows different biomes or biogeographical areas in Brazil. And there's also a list of names. And of course, because it's IELTS, there are distractors. In this case, there are 2 extra options on the list of possible answers. So before you listen, you need to read the list of options so that you know exactly what to listen for. It's also a really good idea to study the map to orientate yourself before the recording starts. For instance, you'll know then that Area 31 is the biggest part and it's in the northeast of the country. Got it? So pause the video for a minute and do that. Then press play when you're ready to do the exam task.
To begin our topic on sustainable development in South America, I would like to briefly acquaint you with the 6 biomes present in the country. Each of these biomes has its own geographic and environmental features, has unique resources that people may exploit, and indeed, each is facing different threats from human development. Biomes, if you recall, are regions that are climatically and geographically defined and contain distinct communities of plants and animals. They are sometimes named for the plant communities that occur, such as forest, savanna and grassland, whether these plants are evergreen or deciduous, and climatic factors as well, for example tropical, temperate, etc. Alright, let's take a look at this map of Brazil. The largest biome in Brazil is the Amazonian rainforest biome, which you can see located in the north of the country. It's one of 2 rainforest biomes in Brazil, the second being the Atlantic rainforest biome, which is located in a relatively narrow strip running up the eastern Atlantic coast. In the very southernmost part of Brazil, bordered by the Atlantic rainforest, lies the very small and relatively unstudied Pampas biome, which is grassland. Finally, stretching like a belt across the middle of the country between the 2 rainforest biomes lie the Pantanal, the Cerrado and the Caatinga. Starting at the left of the map, you can see the smallest of the 3, which is the Pantanal biome, a unique seasonally flooded wetland area. In the centre of the country is the Cerrado, the second largest biome in Brazil. Cerrado is tropical savanna, a scattering of grassland and deciduous forest that experiences a short dry season. Finally, the last biome, called Caatinga, is located between the Cerrado and the Atlantic forest in the northeast of the country. The Caatinga has a very long dry season, lasting 8 to 9 months, and is covered in deciduous scrub. So, let's begin with the Amazonian rainforest biome. As I mentioned previously, it's rainforest and it's incredibly diverse. It contains the largest single reserve of biological organisms in the world. No one really knows how many species occur in the Amazon forest, but scientists estimate that there could be as many as 5 million. Recently, this biome has been under a great deal of pressure from agriculture, with large swathes being cleared and burned to create pasture for the 19 million cattle that the area supports. However, the soils are acidic with very low levels of certain important minerals and are quickly degraded when heavily grazed, which necessitates more clearing and burning of forest. The rainforest is further disturbed by selective logging of valuable tree species.
So, it's pretty tough, right? There's a lot of information and you need to pick out the key ideas. So how many of the answers did you manage to get? And how easy did you find it to navigate the map? So, check your answers and then let's go on to the second part of the exam task. My students often have questions for me about how many points they need to get in the different sections of the listening test in order to achieve their band score. And unfortunately, the answer is not that simple. So if you need help in identifying exactly how many points you need to get, then please do get in touch with Home Studies. We can offer you a free trial lesson to really analyze your level and come up with an action plan for exactly what you need to do and how. So don't miss this chance to sign up for a customized course with us. You can simply click the link below. Got it? Great. Let's get back to the video. In the IELTS listening paper, you might be asked to complete a table, which is basically a record or a summary of the information that you hear. So when you're doing this kind of task for IELTS listening section 4, then you need to follow the talk step by step and write down the missing information in the gaps. So to tackle this task, you first need to check how many words to write in the gaps. This is an essential piece of information. Next, look at the heading of the table so you know generally what kind of information you need to listen for. Then read the column headings so you know the specific pieces of data that you need to identify. And finally, think about the kind of information that could fit the gaps in each row. So this is another prediction task. So let's see how well you can connect the content of the talk with the data on a chart. To do so, let's continue the talk on the biomes in Brazil. Now, when you do this task, it is essential that you try to keep up with the speaker. If you miss one answer, if you miss one gap, then skip it and go on to the next one. Then, after the recording, you can just fill in the gaps at the end with your best guess. But if you get stuck on one, then it's likely that you could miss all of them, and you only get to listen once, so don't make that mistake. Now give yourself 10 seconds to study the chart and think about what kind of information might go in each of the gaps. Then listen to the recording and see how many of the pieces of data you can pick out.
The second largest biome in Brazil is the Cerrado, which is a tropical savanna environment made up of sparse trees and drought-resistant grasses. The Cerrado also contains a huge biodiversity. It's estimated that 1/3 of Brazil's plant and animal species are located in this region. But since 1995, the cultivated pasture area in the Cerrado has increased by almost 70%. It is a common practice to use newly cleared land for the cultivation of crops for a few years, and then when it starts to degrade, to use it for pasture for cattle. The Cerrado now supports 72.3 million cattle, which amounts to 41% of the cattle in Brazil. Next we have the biome called the Saatinga, which is a tropical dryland with a dry season that lasts 8 or 9 months of the year. Vegetation is deciduous, sparse and thorny and contains a high number of species endemic to Brazil. Agriculture is limited by the lack of water, but this biome supports 8.8 million goats and 8.1 million sheep, besides 23.9 million cattle. The Pantanal biome, a wetland formed by the flooding of the rivers of the Paraguay Basin, is the world's biggest flooded plain. Vegetation is patchy and variable. It consists of tall grasses, bushes and widely dispersed trees similar to those of the Cerrado. except that in the Pantanal they are partially submerged for a portion of the year. 3 million cattle are raised in this biome. However, the available grazing area is limited by flooding, so large areas can sustain only low numbers of animals. UNESCO recognises it as a World Biosphere Reserve and also as a World Natural Heritage Site. Ecotourism is becoming important in this region, which diversifies the economic activity. The Atlantic rainforest is the most endangered biome in Brazil and also its most affluent region. It's the most important agricultural and industrial area of the country. It supports 36 million cattle and most of the country's dairy production takes place there. More than 70% of the Brazilian population, the largest Brazilian cities and the production of about 80% of Brazil's gross domestic product are all located in what used to be the Atlantic rainforest. Today, as a result, less than 10% of the Atlantic forest is left. The biome is also beginning to be recognised as ecologically very important. In the state of Bahia, for example, international researchers have identified a world record of 458 tree species in a single hectare of Atlantic forest. That is even more diverse than the Amazon rainforest. At the moment, less than 2% of the remaining Atlantic forest is under protected status, and the scientific community is scrambling to secure what little undisturbed forest still remains. Finally, the Brazilian Pampas biome has a temperate climate. It's the only biome in Brazil that is not tropical. Grasslands scattered with shrubs and trees are the dominant vegetation. The shallow soil, originating from sedimentary rocks, often has an extremely sandy texture that makes it fragile and highly prone to water and wind erosion. The Pampas supports 26 million cattle and 6 million sheep, in mostly natural, unmodified pastures. However, this biome is being threatened with rapid conversion to the agriculture of cash crops. All right, so next week we will go into more detail about the economic policies of the Brazilian government in relation to the development of each of these biomes.
4 points on offer. How many of them did you manage to get? Now, if you've watched the other videos in the IELTS listening series, you'll know that I am a big fan of predicting answers because it can be a super useful exam strategy. However, in this part, prediction is really hard because the answers are quite advanced. They can be quite specific or niche or not things that you would easily guess, if you know what I mean. So instead, in this section, why don't we use the time we have before the recording for something a bit different? Why don't we flip it? So don't think about the sentences or the answers. Instead, think about the questions. What do I mean? Let's have a look. To get comfortable with this reversal, with this strategy of asking questions first, let's look at the summary on tuberculosis, also called TB, and try to write questions about the information missing from each of the gaps. For instance, for number 31, the question would be, what is TB associated with? Then when you listen and you hear this text, it becomes clear that the AIDS epidemic is the answer. So now pause the video, read the notes, and try to come up with questions for numbers 32 to 36. Press play when you're ready to compare your questions with mine. So did that come naturally to you, or do you think it still requires a little bit of work? Well, let's take a look at my ideas, and they're just my ideas. Other suggested questions could work too. So for number 32, we can ask, what has made TB less common? For number 33, where is TB still common? Number 34, the follow-up question, in which specific part of the world? Number 35, how many deaths does it cause per year? And number 36, what percent of the world's population is infected? Now in the exam, you can write the full questions, or you can just write short form questions, like what percent infected, or how many deaths per year. So you need to experiment and see how the strategy can work best for you. Now, listen to the recording and write down answers to the questions that you've written. Please write no more than 2 words and/or a number for each answer. Good luck.
Hello there. Can I have your attention, please? We've got a lot to cover today and we need to get started. If you recall, last week we discussed the AIDS epidemic and its effect on healthcare systems in the countries with the highest incidence. Well, today I'm going to speak about another significant disease that is rather closely associated with the AIDS epidemic: tuberculosis. In the UK, active tuberculosis, otherwise known as TB, was common in the 19th century, the old consumption of romantic novels. Since then, better living conditions, better nutrition, immunisation and effective treatments in the 20th century have all combined to make TB uncommon in the UK today. However, TB is still common in developing countries and parts of Eastern Europe. It causes more deaths worldwide than any other infectious disease, about 3 million per year. This is a tragic statistic, since TB is now generally a curable disease. Overall, 1/3 of the world's population is currently infected with the bacteria that cause TB.
So there is a lot of information there, right? And it's so easy to get lost in details. But if you listen for the specific answers to your questions, it's a bit easier, right? Well, check your answers. There are 5 points on offer. How many of them did you manage to get? What? Signposting, I hear you say. Well, if you've ever watched the TED Talks, I'm sure you've heard lots of examples of these. So if the audience doesn't understand where you are going with your talk or how long they will have to listen to you talking for, they will often stop paying attention. So signposting helps the listener to follow the speaker. Signposts are words or phrases that the speaker uses to signal or sign that they want to move on to a different topic. So they help to connect the ideas while keeping a good flow in the talk. Let's practice with this. So don't worry about the content for now. There's quite a lot of dense vocabulary that is not relevant to the task. Let's just focus on the signposting. Pause the video and try to match the examples of signposting that are highlighted in orange with the functions of signposting A to D. Press play when you're ready to check your answers. What do you think? Were you able to spot the different kinds of signposting? Well, D is an example of signposting which finishes off a topic. You could also hear things like to wrap up this point or to bring this talk to a close. C is an example of signposting which refers back to a previous point in the talk. You could also hear something like the reason for this was, or as I've already mentioned. A is a signpost that is used to introduce a new topic. Other examples of this could be, so I want to start by, or I've been asked to talk to you about. And B is an example of signposting which is used to develop a topic further. You could also hear, next there's a problem of, or and another thing. So there are many, many examples of signposting that you'll hear in talks, not only in the exam, but in any videos or talks that you hear online. So it's really important that you pay attention to these because they can help you to navigate a long talk more easily. And yes, to be good at signposting is absolutely essential for IELTS Listening Section 4. It helps you to not get lost and to keep up with what the speaker says. That's why Home Studies is giving you a free practice pack for your self-study after the video. We want you to get this right. Just click the link in the description box below. Okay, now it's time to try an authentic exam task from IELTS Listening Section 4. This will be the hardest thing you have done in the whole video series, but if you've been with us from the beginning and you've been working on your skills, then you'll be in a good position to give this your best shot. So pause the video and give yourself 60 seconds to prepare the task, just like we've shown you. Then, when you're ready, press play to listen to the recording. You need to complete the notes below and write no more than 3 words for each answer. All right, so put those skills into practice, listen out for the signposting, and I wish you the best of luck.
Good morning. Today's lecture will be about primate behaviour. Up until now, I've talked mostly about physical features, how they apply to living primates, how we use them for classification, how they apply to the fossil record. But human evolution isn't simply about how we've changed physically over the last 70 million years, it's also about how our behaviour has changed. Now, if I asked you to define what is meant by the term human, you could probably, hopefully, give me a list of characteristics that physically define us. But at a philosophical level, I would hope that what you'd be really proud of is not that we normally walk on 2 legs, but that we can reason and imagine. Descartes put it succinctly, "I think, therefore I am," although admittedly not quite in this context. This lecture isn't about human behaviour per se, but about primate behaviour in general, and animal behaviour too, since just as we can use the physical characteristics of living primates to give us clues and insights into the physical characteristics of human ancestors, so we hope that the behaviours of non-human primates will be similarly enlightening for the behaviour of our ancestors. To begin, let's talk a bit about primate cognitive abilities. I don't want to mention a lot of different behaviours without first mentioning cognition. Cognition is the amount of thought that goes into a behaviour. There is a world of difference between an animal hitting a nut with a rock and cracking it by accident, and an animal thinking to itself, "I can't bite into this nut. I know, I need something to use as a hammer to crack it." However, it can be very difficult coming up with experiments to differentiate these two. We can easily test mental skills, such as recall and discrimination, using methods such as the Wisconsin General Test Apparatus and various training experiments. But it's much harder to work out the degree of thought required. This is still a big problem in evaluating the status of great apes. Just how nearly sentient are they? Sentient, for those of you who don't remember, means there is the presence of conscious thought. There are various behaviours that could be seen to support the presence of conscious thought in primates. Various sorts of altruism, or helping others without directly benefiting, can be found in certain great apes. The animals team up to achieve various goals, for example, hunting in chimps. This would seem to require a degree of cognition. Another feature that has come to light recently is Machiavellian intelligence. Work, especially with baboons, seems to indicate that there is a lot of deliberate social deception going on, sneaky mating, passing the blame on to others, using infants for defence. At first glance, this seems very complicated behaviourally, but again, it can just about be explained in a fairly minimally cognitive way. Highly trained chimps, such as the signing chimp, Washoe, and the computer-aided communication of Kanzi, also indicate a high level of intelligence. An interesting fact is that these language-trained chimps do much better in the standardized intelligence tests too, indicating that we probably underestimate primate intelligence in our traditional experiments. It seems that primates are not all that interested in the colour of pencils. They want to know the latest gossip about their friends. Sound familiar? And of course, cognition and intelligence in primates is a thorny problem, with deep moral and political ramifications.
You made it! Congratulations! You survived an IELTS Listening Section 4 exam task. How did it go? Did you manage to keep up, or did you feel like you got lost at times? Well, with this task, practice makes perfect. But for now, pause the video, check your answers, and remember, in order to get the point, your answer has to be word perfect and spelt perfectly. How many points did you manage to get? So before I finish the video, I just want to give you a little motivational point, because I know this is tough and I know you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But basically, all of the information you need is going to be in the audio script. And often the information in the summary is the exact same information that you hear in the audio script. The wording is sometimes even the same. Look at number 34. It says, cognition is the amount of thought that goes into behavior. And in the summary, it's exactly the same thing. So the missing word is thought. Same story for 35. It says it can be very difficult coming up with experiments to differentiate these two. And in the summary, the missing word is experiments. So the wording matches exactly. So this is why I'm saying signposting matters, because if you can just keep up with the speaker and you can follow what they're saying, you're bound to hear the words that you need in the order that you need them. Well, that's gonna do it. If you enjoyed the video, then go on, give us a like, and do stay tuned for the next video tutorials in our IELTS preparation series. Thanks for watching, and cheerio!